distant skies, firefight calls. The stakes are high, John the Slay, heroes and spies. Control fire, where strategy lies. Hear the tales, fierce and deep. Victors roar, defeated weep. We blaze away, we don't hold back. Control fire, ready to attack.
Welcome to Control Fire, your monthly musings on Mantic's Firefight. I'm Mike.
I'm Sam.
And I'm Luke.
And this month we decided that we're going to talk about how to build a community out of Firefight and I guess run through some of our experiences of what we do building the game. But first of all, let's, as we normally start off, let's do a bit of From the Forge. Sam, what have you been up to?
Well, you'll recall from the last episode that I was going to take delivery of a 3D printer. It arrived and I have been using my Mantic Vault subscription probably more than I should. I now have 2 new Armada fleets, the Ghost Fleet and the Trident Realm. I've filled in a lot of the gaps on my Maison Labs, and I may be starting to print bits for a GCPS army, making it army number 5 for Firefight. So yeah, the 3D printer has been a bit of a game changer. The Vault is a slippery slope I find myself on.
Yeah, absolutely. I get bashed from the Vault all the time to fill in gaps and things. And funny you mentioned the fleet. Was that the undead one that you printed?
The Ghost Fleet?
The Ghost Fleet? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually saw that for the first time as I was scrolling through the Vault today. And man, those are awesome.
Anytime you want a game of Armada.
Well, I have to look. I've got some of the stuff for it. I've just never played, so I have to learn sometime.
Awesome.
So for myself, I haven't been doing much hobby specifically. What I did do is I cleaned out the shed. I moved at the end of last year and haven't gotten my shed entirely sorted in that time. So I cleaned that out and I set up a sweet new printing area with a full new bench top and all my printers out there nicely lined up. So I've been printing trophies for the Kings of War tournament this weekend, SpringCon. So prepping trophies for that is my hobby at the moment.
Awesome.
Mike?
I've been on a bit of a hobby low for a while. It's mainly my kids have been really busy. It's been the end of rugby season for my son, and my daughter was in the school musical, and that finished at the end of the term, so I've had to do a lot of running around after them. But we do have the Firefight tournament coming up in SpringCon this weekend.
Yeah.
Luke the Traitor decided to run the Kings of War version and said I'm doing the Firefight version.
So we have Luke running Kings, Mike running Firefight, and I just get to play. It's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm helping with the event a bit as a whole, so I figured I'd run the tournament so I didn't have to be tied to a table the whole day. All
right, so as Mike was saying, we're going to be looking a little bit at community building this time. One of the things, of course, we love about all of our tabletop gaming is that it's not something you can do by yourself. You have to do it with friends, and that means getting a community of gamers around yourself so that you can play games and have fun. But how do you build that community? If we're talking about Firefight, how do you describe Firefight to people who have never heard of it? What's your elevator pitch for Firefight? So I guess if I'm looking at mine, I say it's a sci-fi game in an oppressive corporate universe. It's a utopia or a dystopia, depending very much on where you live. Humanity has greedily incorporated alien cultures to fuel perpetual growth and exterminates any alien race that are too problematic. The game itself has a heavy objective focus, has streamlined squad movement and shooting by focusing on unit leaders, and has opportunities for cunning commanders to pull off some big plays from a limited pool of command points. That's how I'd describe the game to someone who hasn't played Firefight before.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, especially because it was put more eloquently than I think I would have managed myself. It is a unique setting, like insofar as, some of the more popular war games go, I suppose. Certainly different to anything grimdark at the very least. While the cost to buy in is a pro for many people, I prefer to lean into the streamlined play aspect of it. It's actually an enjoyable game to play, which is, compared to some other games that I can think of that feel like a chore. There's other games I've played in the past where the thought of playing was what drove me, not the act of playing, right? So the build up to the games was what I enjoyed thinking about, and then I'd play and it would feel like a chore. Firefight, not at all like that. It's absolutely enjoyable to sit down and play at the table.
I think probably because so much of the game actually happens on the table rather than in list building. I mean, list building is very important, and we covered it last episode. But the enjoyment and the game itself is on the table, not in the lead up to it.
Yeah, you can. I actually tell people you can lose the game in list building, but you can't win it.
Yeah.
So you can easily not have the tools that you need in the game by shooting yourself in the foot list building, but as long as your list is decent, the game is won on the table.
And how do you make sure you avoid any of those pitfalls in list building?
Well, maybe you can listen to a podcast episode on list building, Controlled Fire episode 4.
Excellent. Mike, for your elevator pitch for Firefight?
Oh, mostly the same for you guys, so you're just going through. But for me, it's each individual faction has its own unique and flavour and play style, and it comes to life on the table for each particular faction. Again, just as I said, the more popular war games, it unfortunately tends to have around about 10 factions, but a lot of them are very similar. Where this one, you said you got every single faction does play differently. They all have different strengths and weaknesses, and they're all balanced very well against each other. So the things with those command points, etc., give more variety and depth to the game, and the commanders to go through. So it enhances that play style. So you really feel like you're playing a particular type of army, because it is, like Forge Fire is obviously mine, as I've mentioned many times, slow but hardy and tough. And then you can play something that's soft and squishy and fast, like Night Stalkers or something else like that. So they all play very, very differently across from each other.
Absolutely. And even ones which might on the face of it look a little bit similar, like say Plague and Maison, because they've got some crossover units, or Maison and GCPS, they actually really play quite differently. And they also have a very different feel. Like GCPS feels very corporate, and it's very much, these troops are expendable, they're only here because they're getting paid. Maison has a different kind of expendability, because you just get to unleash your inner mad scientist. So in terms of how we bring people to Firefight, I think probably a lot of people have come to it from Dead Zone, because Dead Zone is the game that came first.
You know, when you think about a gateway game based on the same models, it's easy to imagine that, it just means that you already have some models, so just get some more and you're good. But, in reality, the disparity between Dead Zone and Firefight in terms of the model ranges you need, like the model count you need, is so vastly different that you may as well be buying into a new game if you come to Firefight from Dead Zone. There's two other main ways that I think I've seen Dead Zone work as a gateway. The first is obviously a community thing. If you start playing Dead Zone and see all the same players you enjoy playing Firefight, that's you're in. Community, which evidently is what this episode is all about, is part of that gateway aspect. The second, I think, is a bit cheekier, because I've had this conversation before. Did you know that for a very reasonable price, you can buy a Firefight Strike Force and get so many options for your Dead Zone team? Yeah. So instead of buying this one little team that gives you a few options, buy this box, which is really cheap for what you get, and you get so many options for Dead Zone. And then, wait, hear me out. You have all these models, right? Yeah. It's actually like, it works. I've seen it work a few times now. And it's I say it like I'm acting a bit underhanded. Like, if you're just playing Dead Zone, it's still a great way. You don't have to come across to Firefight. But, sometimes it's that little push that people need.
You're absolutely right. I mean, one of the things that I'd probably get one of the Dead Zone starter boxes first, just because that gives you a lot of the terrain you're going to need to be playing the game, and the dice and all that sort of stuff, and a little bit of a core. But absolutely, the getting into Dead Zone, the second purchase really could be a Firefight Strike Force. And if you've got that and a Dead Zone starter box, you've basically got a table and an army.
Yeah, and they all come with vehicles, which could just be placed on a Dead Zone board as terrain, right? Like, that's a cool way to use those vehicles. But also, I've got this cool vehicle. It sure would be nice to use it. Well.
And it's interesting you mentioned the model count disparity between Dead Zone and Firefight. And I guess it is big, but it probably isn't as big as the disparity between some other gateways and their main ones. I guess I'm thinking Kings of War Vanguard had a much smaller model count compared to the vast number of models you have for Kings of War. And of course, they're all on single bases, and most people who play Kings of War tend to do it on multi-bases now. Whereas for Dead Zone translating into Firefight, I think it's a much a much smoother transition.
And it's really, really cool the other way. I have a couple of Dead Zone forces from before Firefight came out, but I wanted to play Marauders, which I didn't ever build a Dead Zone force for, but I've got this Firefight army. And I could basically take anything from Dead Zone that I wanted because I have so many models, I have everything to choose from. So it works really, really well that way.
As well as I think that would have been really nicely into the story. Like you've got your army and this is your Firefight army, but we actually want to do this particular tactical op. We have a perfect opportunity to play Dead Zone for something like that.
So I just realised today that it was actually after SpringCon last year that I started to run gaming days at the local club. Started off with a few Dead Zone days in a row on just on the monthly meet, going through on it, and then I went away overseas over Christmas time and decided over that period of time I was going to try to push to Semantic Sci-Fi in Brisbane, which is where we're from. And go from there. So all the things that you were saying is basically it. I did take the Dead Zone angle and started to push that there. And the one thing I'm going to say here is Brisbane is not a very big city. But after saying that, I was amazed at how many people came out of the woodwork because I started to push this Dead Zone system originally in not only gaming clubs, but also in particular stores. And people wanted to play Dead Zone. Seriously, in the case, all I kept hearing was, I wanted to hear, but I didn't see anybody playing it. So if the one thing I can tell everybody here from this podcast is you just get out there and start having games, start going to clubs, start going to stores, and just start running them. I'll go into a bit more about my particular system that I run, but you will be amazed. And then the things that Luke was just talking about a second ago is what happens next. It moves on to coming into Firefight. So you run a few Dead Zone days where people are just coming to have a look and to play and then buy 2-player sets. Brisbane ran out of 2-player sets at one point in time because people were buying any. No one had any in Brisbane. I was searching stores and resellers everywhere trying to get them. I don't even think there was anywhere in the country. The other two big online retailers are in other states. But so it became that popular, people just bought them. And then I just started to say, hey, how about you play? I'll run Firefight and Dead Zone together. So I started running them at the same time so that all the people who had bought these 2-player Dead Zone sets could just look to the right or look to the left and see Firefight being played on another table nearby. So it really does work. I got into Firefight originally from playing Dead Zone, and then I went, I have these models. If I have buy a Strike box, I got a Strike Force box, I got more than enough to be able to go through, and that's how I started playing Firefight. So it really is a good lead in between the two. And if you don't play Dead Zone already, give it a shot. It's a fantastic game.
It really is. And I mean, you're doing excellent work in terms of bringing a community together for us. It's wonderful. And it's absolutely right. The most important thing is showing up and playing.
Yeah. As I said, we're on this it's a small city compared to a lot of places in the world, or just under maybe 2 mil, I think. It's, I could not believe how many people just started saying, oh, I want to give it a go. Where are you playing at? And then they just keep turning up regularly every single month, well, in 2 different places. But basically, we've grown the community from around about 8 to about 40 in about 12 months. So, and that's an estimated number because normally at one of the stores that I go to, we get around about 20 turning up on a Saturday, and it's generally different people. So that's why I'm throwing it out as an estimate. There's around about 40 people playing Dead Zone now across Brisbane. Hopefully I can convert a few more of those people into playing Firefight. I know there's a few who've been converted, which is great, and just hopefully convert a few more.
Yeah, I think some of our closer community even that have other commitments haven't made any of those game days. So so that just speaks to how many people are showing up, and that's well done, Mike. And speaking of those community events, that does bring us into setting up a community event. Mike, do you want to take us through how you structure it?
So what I've discovered works for me is I don't run them as a tournament format. I call them come and play days. Come and play Dead Zone, or come and play Firefight days. And for Dead Zone in particular, it's very unstructured. People can just bring whatever point list that they have, and then I just sort of pair them up with other people who have a similar point list, whether it's 100, 150, 200. whatever it happens to be. And the store we go to, luckily, does not charge us for the tables. The club has its membership fee, but generally it's normally pretty easy on letting people come if they're pretty new. Most people who would go to a local club are members anyway, so they're allowed to turn up on an annual fee anyway. So it's just a matter of going to those. And what I normally would do is I offer raffle tickets. One raffle ticket for just turning up. Just for being there, you get one raffle ticket in the draw. You get one raffle ticket for winning. You get one raffle ticket for it being painted. And I always offer one raffle ticket for buying something from the store, because you've got to get the store to got to give the store won't keep buying us back if they're not selling some kind of product. And I don't restrict that. It can be a can of drink, or it could, but I've seen plenty of people buying terrain crates and things like that from the store too.
It's being a good store citizen then, right?
Yes, it's got to be. Otherwise, you said if you don't be a good store citizen, and then the store won't want you back because you're just taking up their space and that they could be using for other things. So, and that's mainly it. And then I just sort of sit back, and then if I see people, get people to play together. If I see someone new, I just ask them about how often they played. Is it their first game? Have they played for a while? And then I try to pair them up with someone similar. The main thing I do try to do is I do try to pair new people up with people who are not overly competitive. I try to put them up against people who are more happy just to let the other person to roll the dice and see how they play. There are certainly some people who are very competitive, and I try to keep those people to play against each other and get these people just to play that way and having fun. And then if I see people standing around, I'll go up to them and ask them how did they go? Did they want another game? And try to put them together with somebody else and keep mixing it up between everybody. And that's the main bit. It's about trying to keep it fun, having a few laughs, making sure people are happy. And then I have my own, I've got about 5 or 6 dead zone teams, so I can let people borrow models if they like. Other people there generally will let other people borrow their strike teams. And I'm not sure if they'll actually listen to this, but I've had help along the way. I just want to give a shout out to Andy Bryant, who originally took it into some of the other clubs for me that I couldn't make it because my son was playing football. And they said Jason and Sam, who both offered Armies to play at SpringCon. Scott also started to take over one of the game store ones that we've got as well. So there's been help, but they said it's been good, and that's basically the way it is. And then just keep turning up every single month. I normally advertise it about 2 weeks beforehand on Facebook. I put it out to as many of the local gaming spots that I know. I ask the store to advertise it and put it on their own boards and things like that to go through. And then basically 1 week beforehand, I will then spam it again just to get everybody out there. But normally after that, I leave it alone. And then it's that two a month, I think, is enough. And otherwise you start getting people irritated and maybe banning me or whatever, but it's going through. But it's just a case to keep that excitement going on what's actually happening and being consistent and turning up every single month. And these people know that I'm going to be there every single month, except for this month because we've got SpringCon on. But we've let everybody know that they can come to SpringCon instead.
And yeah, speaking of events, we've mentioned a few times now about Mike, with help from Matt from Countercharge, setting up the Clash of Protocols at what's now Mantic Mania, the Clash of Kings tournament in Australia in January. And by my count, there's at least 15 people that I've spoken to directly that are starting Fight just because of Clash of Protocols. And that's amazing. Like that's just, so I don't know how many people I haven't spoken to, but just that I have spoken to from around Australia are starting it. So yeah, build it and they will come.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's pretty much my mantra. Field of dreams all the way. If you build it, they will come, and that's that. I have to admit, even I'm surprised at that. I had relatively low numbers in my head when I originally decided to give it a shot and see whether or not people would like to join in after Clash for Kings of War and see how many other people would go in. I knew we had a reasonable scene here in Brisbane, and I just wanted to see if I could get that scene going in the rest of the country. I knew there was pockets here and there in different places, but it was just an opportunity. I thought we would give it a shot to see whether or not we could build something bigger and better out of it. And Luke, with his networking skills and talks to absolutely everybody in Kings of War, has got everybody in his ear at the moment, which is good.
Now I could organise a road trip down to Canberra.
Yes.
Road
yes.
trip.
Yeah, no, we have to worry about terrain and things like that.
Yeah, we were just talking the other day. How are we going to fill that many tables?
Yeah, but it just goes to show you put an event out there, maybe don't have too much of expectations at first, but even if you get 4 together, you should be able to run a small round robin and everyone gets to play each other once. So there's 3 games for everybody who's there, and then and you keep on going from there, and you build it up a bit more, and you build it up a bit more. I think it's just the putting it out there and consistent showing up.
I mean, it's probably also worth giving a shout out to the Mantic Pathfinders in Briz, who have been doing such stellar work in terms of building this. I mean, Neil has been working so hard. I mean, the club we keep referencing, it's the club that Neil put together. And Kiva's been doing a lot of work in terms of demos and so on for Dead Zone at BrizCon and all that sort of stuff. So the Mantic Pathfinders are an absolute asset in building your community as well. Well, thinking about intro games, how do you run a really, really good intro game? Because you've got someone who hasn't seen Dead Zone or Firefight before. What are the sorts of things you do when you run an intro? So I should say, back in the mists of time in the early noughties, when I was a Games Workshop redshirt, this was most of my job. Was someone walks into the shop, they've never seen any kind of tabletop game before, and I play a game with them and get them to have such a fun time. They walk out with a starter box and a paint set and some glue, and they found themselves a new hobby. So in terms of the sorts of audiences that you're probably looking at for your intro games, I think there are probably 3 ones for Firefight. So you've got those who are entirely new to tabletop. So this could be like Kiva was doing at BrizCon, where people are just walking around looking at these games, and they see someone sat down with Dead Zone, and that's your audience, someone who's brand new to tabletop gaming. Or it could be gamers who have previous experience with Mantic systems, and I'll talk about that in a sec. And you've also got people who are experienced tabletop gamers but haven't really played Mantic. And I think there are probably 3 different ways to approach those 3 different people. So for the new gamers, I think it's really important to emphasize the narrative in a play. We want to tell a story. This isn't just random tokens moving around on a tabletop. You have to give it stakes. Make this a story. There's a reason all this stuff is happening. If you're doing it in Dead Zone, giving people names is a great way in order to construct narrative. So or even nicknames. So having Sunlight Dapples Stillwater pounces on Slow Jim is a lot more exciting than Myra Belindage moves into the queue with your GCPS Marine and initiates a fight. You want to give it a story. These are active characters. For current Mantic gamers, it's exactly the same. You still want to make it a story, but you can certainly be relating it to mechanics and narrative that they already know. So if they play Dead Zone and you're giving them an intro in Firefight, they should already be very familiar with the world. So you can say, well, this is just like Dead Zone, but big. Or all the little skirmishes happening on these constrained boards in isolated pockets of a ruined city. This is now sprawling out into entire armies clashing on these battlefields. You can also reference mechanics they're familiar with, because Firefight pulls on a lot of mechanics familiar across Mantic systems. So command dice and orders are straight out of Vanguard and completely uncontroversially coming to Kings of War soon. Rolling to hit and damage is also very, very similar to Kings, just D8s instead of D6s. Short and long actions we find in both Dead Zone and Vanguard. So there's a lot of shared DNA across the Mantic games, which makes it a lot easier to run intro games for Mantic gamers. For non-Mantic gamers, those who are already experienced in tabletop, probably my number 1 tip would be keep it positive. Because slagging off other game system wins over no one. We all feel, I guess in some ways, part of our identity tied to the kind of games that we play. That we've invested a lot of time in collecting these armies and strike forces and teams and modeling them and painting them. If someone says that something that we like is trash, we're entirely just likely to reject anything further that they're going to say. If they reference something from a game they already play, that's awesome. They already know something. So keep it positive. With all of this, your number 1 aim is for them to walk away having enjoyed themselves. That's by far and away the key goal with any of it. Of course, the entire reason we play games is to have fun, right? So for an intro game, that is absolutely the number one goal. Probably my next tip would be don't sweat every rule. You don't stop the game just to look up a rule that you've got a little. Just roll it on. You don't need to look up niche cases. This is not a full teach or anything like that. Look it up after the game if you really care. Don't stop the action. The rules are not important. The fun is important. And probably my third tip would be to begin in the action. So don't waste time teaching them exactly how to do a recon roll, and then here is how we deploy our forces. Just jump into the fun bit. Get the armies all set up, ready to go, and then go, right, this is this squad, this is this squad, here's the objective of this game, here's what's at stake and what we're playing over, let's jump into the action. Those are probably my tips for running an intro game that people remember. And if you give them names and stakes, that they're more likely to remember the story of what you've been spinning together.
From a Dead Zone perspective, then it's relatively easy to do that because you're only talking about 5 or 6 models.
100%.
But yeah, for me, it's all about the fun and it's about to go through. So what I normally try to do in either system is turn 1, I will run them through pretty much step by step, but there's probably a number of rules that I've left out, but I just generally say, hey, there's some rules in here that I'm not playing at the moment we can look at later. But it's just more about continuing to go on and just keep going with what they're going. And I guess by the end of middle of turn 2, I'm going to start to try to find myself an excuse for me to go away somewhere away, but just keep my eye on the table at the same time. It can be any particular reason or in there to sort of see. I might go chat to another game. I might just go and say, hey, do you need something to help? And I'll come back again, hopefully at the end of turn 2 to turn 3 and see how they're going and just say, see, you guys have this, or guys and girls, you have this, and you've got the rules already, and you tend to get to straight away and they're already going, oh, I already have the rules for this game already, and it makes it easier for them to go through. But the biggest thing is easily the fun. Make sure that they're having fun. And if they're getting glassy-eyed, then you probably want to go back over there again to see what's happening and just to go through and give them a bit of encouragement about what's actually happening in there. But yeah, just try to get them to the point, because the rules are relatively simple. Just keep the rules relatively basic for the first game. Try to get them to the point where they can start doing it all by themselves without you standing there. And then ask them if they had fun at the end and what did they like about the game and things like that. And then maybe you can have a chat about some of the other factions in the game if they seem to be pretty hyper about the game that they just played.
Absolutely. And that's very much, I guess, if you're running a teach between 2 people and so on there, you find a way to extricate.
Yeah.
I guess you can also do it if you're playing a game one-on-one with someone, getting a side-along extrication by having... You, over there, roll these dice for me.
Yep.
Excellent. Now, can you push them along and then you slowly slide yourself out and so on? But works often pretty well with younger players as well, who are often just happy to be rolling dice. So.
Yeah, that's it. That's generally it's surprising how many mums and children and dads and children I've taught how to play particularly Dead Zone. And some of them have now moved on to Firefight after that, but... and seeing those, but otherwise at Dead Zone days it's kind of like you're new, okay, you sit down at this table here next to me here and I'll start running you through that game. You're off you go and you start to play, or if it's just a single one, as I said, I just put them up against somebody who I know will give them an relatively easy time, just to get them, make sure they have fun.
I mean, and speaking as a father, if anyone's going to pull my kids in and entertain and distract them for a bit and so on, that is an opportunity I'm going to be jumping at.
Yep, that's it.
Neil's actually done that walk away from the table for a bit during my first game of Dead Zone. Difference was he left the building to go pick up his wife. I couldn't call him over for help, and but we got through.
Do you often have people walk away from the table with you?
Yeah, we did. Actually, that was with young Jack as well for his first game. So that was really cool. Sam, I like your point about the don't can other people's games.
Yeah.
That's really important. It is something that a lot of people that play Mantic games have been burnt by gaming companies in the past, and they may have some sort of residual resentment to that, and it is very common for that to kind of come up in conversation, and it is very important, I think, whether it's a demo game or whether it's just people stopping by your table to to see what you're playing, that we sort of keep a lid on that and don't let it bubble out.
No one wants to hang around a negative person. So
Yeah.
don't be that guy.
Yeah, and it can give a really bad view of the community as a whole.
100%.
For one little offhand comment. So yeah, just really do try to avoid it. And in a game the scale of Firefight, you don't need to give models individual names. That's a bit too much.
Oh, sure.
But adding cinematic things is absolutely the way. Someone fires a frag shell at a unit that's going to wipe them all out, but instead it does one measly wound. Well, that's because Bobby jumped on the shell and protected his squad mates and got blown to smithereens, but the rest of them survived.
Absolutely. And a Strider Polaris comes in and fires at a regular unit, and of course all you got left is smoke and boots.
It's just the boots line up across the ground smoking. Yep.
I just wanted to also add about the other system, about proxying. People in the other systems, and they might be a bit disenfranchised with their own system. They have the models, they spent their money on it already. If they're interested in playing your game, let them use their models that they're going in there to start playing with them on the table. It gives them another use for the money that they've already spent. And just look to the future and the fact that hopefully later on down the line, they will then decide that they're going to buy more Mantic models for more Mantic armies in the future. I just get them to play with the models that they've got and try and win those people over to a new system that they've got playing in there. Can't stress that enough. Sam's really good point about not criticising the other system. They've already made that decision. That's completely up to them. Take the opportunity that you have to show them your wonderful game and what it can actually do, and let them play with the models that they currently have.
Absolutely. You don't want to throw up these artificial barriers to them getting into the game. Why would you?
No gatekeeping. I think there is a bit of reluctance from the Mantic sort of communities about the proxy models, given what's happened with Kings of War, where some people come in and they never buy a Mantic model, and they have multiple armies and they're all 3D printed or proxied or whatever, and that's not sustainable for the company that's making the game. However, with Firefight, they started on such a good footing with the model support and the range that they had. I've yet to see anybody start the game with non-Mantic models and not end up moving away from their non-Mantic models.
They're all beautiful hard plastics as at the core of every army. It's wonderful.
People just use it to get a taste for the game, to see if they like it, and then they go and buy a Mantic army. I have never seen it work any other way.
I know one of the people who are coming to SpringCon basically has a Smurf army, and that's what they used to play. And now they have 2 strike forces for 2 different army systems. Just let them try it. The game will sell itself. Then they'll start buying the Mantic models on top of that.
Absolutely. Well, in terms of people acquiring the next army, one of the most popular is to build in a slow grow campaign so that people can acquire these armies over time. Luke, do you have much experience with these?
A little. So for those not familiar, a slow grow campaign is a concept whereby a group of people pick up a game or a new army for a game and slowly build it up, assembling and painting and playing games over a period of time. So usually there's monthly goals set, and sometimes they have prizes, but the idea is to start, you want to get 250 points or whatever that is in that game, and then the next month you have a total of 500, and then more and more as the time goes on. I think they can be great, and in particular they can be great when a number of new players that have an existing relationship and play a lot of games together get involved. Like a friendship group or a gaming club. They can also be good like the countercharge ones, where the goal isn't exactly new players, but more getting people to buy more Mantic armies, which is really cool. The problem is twofold. Like, one is it's actually quite a lot of effort to run, so you kind of need someone at the helm that's going to put in that effort to keep it going. And two, it's really easy for interest to wane. And I know this because I've run one. I think you have to go into these with low expectations and low commitment buy-ins. So you have to set those barriers low. It has to be run by someone that can keep the hype alive. And if you can hit the right balance for your group, I think it is an excellent tool for creating a core group and starting to build out a broader community from there.
Yeah, I did do one for Firefight 2 years ago. I didn't do anything this particular year. Mainly been running events, but again, I think it's a little bit difficult to work out the points values, because it's a bit difficult to work out how many point values to actually start at your first game, whether it's like 500 or 750 or something like that. I'll probably have a look at it for next year and maybe have another try, because we built a bit of a community up there, and it'd be good to see some people collecting a few more. And I know there's a few people who are currently collecting at the moment, so it might give them encouragement to certainly put some paint on their armies just to get that rolling along. But yeah, it's a good way. I mean, if I think of a lot of games that I've tried, it's because it started off as a slow grow. I got interested in Infinity for a little while this year because they had a slow grow, so I gave that a try as well, going through. So I said there's other systems and it works quite well. I think originally when I got into Dead Zone was because of a campaign, which was going through as well, which we'll talk about probably a little bit later on. Yeah, that's basically some of the interests that we're sort of going through, and then slowly but surely building your way up a unit at a time is pretty good.
I guess Dead Zone could form a part of a Firefight slow grow, right? So you could have a 100 point Dead Zone for month one, a 200 for month two, and then go into 500, 750, 1,000 points. Because people aren't going to, just do their 6 models for Dead Zone. They'll start doing more, but if they can then play a game with whatever they've done so far on month 1, month 2, then that could actually be a really good lead-in.
Yeah, it's a nice little springboard. So, I mean, for mine, the thing that always makes me want to keep painting is when I'm actually playing with the models at the time. So I guess it's finding the optimal points at the starting one, which I think we were saying 500. I think that probably is. You could probably get 500 points of Firefight on the table and have, if not a great game, at least a viable game. And
so I get about 3 units or so, 3 or 4 units.
You get a commander, a couple of troop units, and maybe something small on there, which I think is probably about right for the start of a slow grow core.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think the hype can be there, particularly for those who are more gaming focused. If it isn't just a painting challenge, but it is also there's fortnightly or monthly games tied in with whatever it is that's being painted at the time as well.
Yeah, that's why you need that sort of that community or that place where you're playing that frequently. A friendship group or a club or something like that. I think playing with the models is the biggest driver for everyone, right? Mm-hmm. That's why there's so many Kings of War armies that are only between 2 and 2,500 points, and then no more. I don't have all the options to build different lists because I build those armies for a tournament that I'm going to, and then I stop and move on because hobby ADHD. But so like I can get in the zone and I can get things painted if I've got a target to work to, which slow grows can help.
So probably the other kind of gaming campaign where we're all pretty familiar with is the narrative campaign. A lot of us will have played in things like Blood Bowl leagues or Dread Ball leagues, or have done map-based campaigns, and those I think I mentioned in episode 1 that those are just like my gold standard of gaming. They're the things I enjoy the most because it's spinning out the narrative, right? So I've run a few successful narrative campaigns, and probably like a lot of people who've run a whole bunch of unsuccessful ones as well. So I mean, if you do look at turning your slow grow campaign or want to set up a narrative campaign as a means of building your community, I've probably got a few things I'd say. One is that you have to go in from the start, as Luke mentioned with the slow grow campaign, with the idea that not everyone's going to finish it. People are going to be coming in with different levels of engagement. So designing your campaign in such a way that people who are very, very keen can get lots of games and that's scratching their itch and great. And those who may not have the same amount of availability or may not have the same level of interest, building in still ways for them to be participating and getting what they need to out of it as well. One of the main reasons we see people drop off is when they're not doing terribly well. That kind of tends to make our interest wane. I've seen some campaign systems set up where as people conquer more map territory, say, they get more and more bonuses, and that kind of snowballs into whoever's doing very well in the campaign. Well, it's pretty hard to stop them now because they've got all the territory and they're probably just going to win. I'd probably recommend doing rubber banding instead, by which I mean you increase the resistance the better that person is doing. You're winning game after game, great. We probably need to make things a little bit harder for you. You've been having a bit of a run of bad luck. Well, here's some extra bonuses in order to. So rather than encouraging the winners to play more, they're probably already going to. You actually need to build in incentives for those who aren't doing so well to continue engaging with the campaign.
Like reverse beer pong. That's the one where every ball you get in a cup, you have to drink the cup. So you stop being able to win after a little while because you're too drunk.
I was actually going to refer to the Mario Kart blue shell, but we know that the Mario Kart is set up. The further you are back in the thing, the better the unlocks are, and so on. Until the blue shell exists, so that someone in last place can take out someone in first place. So you need to build in that sort of rubber banding mechanic to keep the those who aren't doing so well engaged. My third thing would be, Mike mentioned before that for the Dreadball leagues, I'll often do the admin. You have to find someone who enjoys doing spreadsheets and make them your friend, because having a central point of reference which is continually updated and everyone can see it, and it's tidy and orderly and organized and up to date, that makes just the administration of a campaign so much easier. And you also need to have someone like Mike, so someone who's able to keep the interest going and bring everyone in. So you do need to have that spreadsheet guy, and you also do need to have the face as well. There you go, Mike, you're the face.
I'm the face. Not a very pretty face. Great face for podcasting.
He's a face.
It's why we don't do YouTube. Yeah, well, so credit to Sam. Sam originally did set up that Dreadball League. I just took over the face part of it, and Sam continues to do that on there. Which incidentally, because I partnered with Sam to keep that going, is what gave me the courage to be able to do what I do for Dead Zone and Firefight here in Brisbane. Just on that, the rules inside, if you want to get an idea for Firefight and what to do for the rubber banding that Sam was just talking about, both Dreadball and Dead Zone have excellent systems for that rubber banding. So if you've got someone who can only play once a month and they're not going to play against someone who's played every single week, yes, they may lose, but they'll get such a huge boost from that in the next game they'll be all set up for again for playing that, and it keeps their interest going.
Mm-hmm. We mentioned that as you're the face, you're there maintaining the momentum in a campaign. What would be your tips for maintaining momentum?
I think you basically went through a number of them there. It's just constant updates. If you are able to give a bit of a narrative of the story, is good. If you can want to write a little bit of a story about what happened in the turn before or the last couple of weeks, depending upon how you've structured it up, and then people can sort of get involved in that. Quietly prod people who haven't played in a little while, see how they're going, check on them. Always important to check on their health first and make sure that there's nothing else happening on the side. Then go in and then ask them if you need help arranging a game or something like that. They could just be shy. Or there could be other life events happening with there. So it's always good to check on your people. We just had Are You OK Day, so it's good to keep that in front of everyone's minds as far as that's concerned as well. And don't get upset, take it personally if someone drops out, because life happens. You don't know what's actually involved in there. Just keep a casual touch on, see how everybody is. And just try to keep it fun. I can't stress that enough. Just keep it fun. Have a few laughs. Pick a few people you can have a joke with and a bit of a laugh, and everyone don't mind having everyone laughing at them too. And just keep going with that until it meets its conclusion. But don't be frightened to pull it short as well. If the momentum seems to wane, try to wrap it up so that you can continue. So then you have a satisfactory finish to that particular campaign. So that whenever you go to do the next one, you'll probably find more people will be interested in joining up for the next one.
Absolutely. That was one of the tips I should have written down, but keep it shorter than you think it's going to run. People would much rather end an awesome campaign than feel compelled to keep playing in one which has just outstayed its welcome. Mm-hmm. Excellent. And absolutely, keep it fun. It's why we game.
Yes.
Luke, do you have anything?
Well, so not specific to campaigns, but I think, with technology now, there's always loads of ways to be chatting. I don't think Facebook groups are necessarily the best way to converse with our peers. We see that kind of go downhill sometimes. But in particular, we have a couple of local messenger groups here with a bunch of players. Particularly, we have one for Dreadball, Dead Zone, and Firefight. And then there's different Discords like Countercharge After Dark, Mantic Games Discord, and some other local ones and whatnot. And I think everyone, so whether or not you're running campaigns, slow grows, running events, doing any of those things, everyone can participate in maintaining momentum for the game just by being an active participant and a positive active participant in those group chats. If people see a little bit of chatter every day, not a lot, not too much that people switch it off and mute it, but enough to keep engaged and interested, and it's positive chatter, once people get into those groups, it's very hard for people to leave. Not technically, they can leave.
This isn't a cult.
They can leave quite easily, but people I find people just it becomes part of their day. Check the chat groups. There's someone's posted some cool photos, or someone's talking about this thing. I think in particular, what makes our sci-fi group chat so good. Even besides the fact that everyone's just very positive and very into the game, and also we were just talking about that earlier, weren't we, Sam, about how positive that group actually is, but also the lore always creeps into the chat.
Yeah.
Unlike the King's chat where no one cares about the lore, there's never any lore talk in there, but in that chat, particularly yourself and Jason, as well as some others, always get really involved in like bringing the lore into the discussions about models and painted armies and games and that sort of stuff, and I think that's awesome. I'm there for that.
Yeah, it takes all. You've got to remember, there's different things that attract different people. So yes, the lore. I won't say as much. Sam's the lore master here. I think I do a reasonable amount of lore. But yeah, Sam pulls me up all the time. But that's sort of it. Different people interest different people, and so, like I know in the Kings, I don't agree with it, but they do say there's not much lore there. But I think there is a fair bit of lore. You have to go looking for it a little bit more. Firefight has got plenty of lore around, and there's plenty of books, and there's also novels as well that can fill it out. And you can easily find out about a lot of stuff if you really wanted to.
Well, I think the difference, with Kings is that, the lore's there, but it's not insidious, like it is in Firefight. I use that as a joke term with all love. But, think about codexes from 40k and Warhammer Fantasy Battles, right? The lore's all there. You can't read an army list without reading lore. It's just there and in your face. It's always coming out. Kings of War doesn't really have that. Like, you have to go looking for it, like you say, Mike. But I tend to find with Firefight and Dead Zone, just somehow, even though they don't have, it's kind of the same as Kings of War in terms of their books, and you can read a list and it's just a list, but somehow, I don't know how they've managed it, but the lore just keeps coming out. You don't have to go looking for it. You will just keep coming across it. Maybe Dead Zone's the reason for that, right? You go through the Dead Zone books and it's just lore everywhere. I think, you have to go find the lore for Kings of War, but the lore just keeps getting in your face for Firefight and Dead Zone.
There's some rather large paragraphs in the book. You probably haven't got to them because you're too busy looking at them.
Look at the pictures.
You've only got there with your calculator with all the lists and the way you go. Just after that section, there's actually a fair bit of stories actually after that, if you actually go through, and same as Desert. And of course, everybody else knows here I'm jesting away. But then also, as I say, believe it or not, actually in Dreadball too, there's actually, because it's all part of the same universe and it all meshes in together, and that's the beauty of it all. So you've got 3 different games all meshed into the Warpath universe, and they all tell stories from that particular universe, from that particular game's angle, but it does all fit together.
I will also say the Warpath source book is an excellent source of material for lore and so on. It's that came out from the original Warpath Kickstarter and from the original Warpath First Edition, and it really helped paint the picture of the universe. I mean, the Warpath source book really helps say what the universe is and how all of the factions fit into it. The Warpath sourcebook is free to download from the Mantic site. So, I mean, considering we've been talking about how much you want to be spinning stories out of your games, if you do get a chance, go and download it. It's free, and it's a really good read as to all the factions. Also, give a shout out to the Mantic Lore podcast as well. They delve deep into all the Mantic lore as well. So we'll have seen that this episode is called Communities Are Built with Shensig Interplanetary Prefab. Well, I mean, the reason it's called that is because in the original Dead Zone lore, Shensig Interplanetary make the shipping crates that fly people as they're coming out to colonize the fourth sphere. All their stuff is contained in these shipping crates, and then they unbox their stuff and then use those shipping crates in order to construct their domiciles, their dwellings. And that's the in-law reason for why all the Dead Zone terrain is in such beautiful cubes, is because everything is constructed out of Shensig Interplanetary Prefab shipping containers.
Yeah, Sam is the one that told me that recently, and it was one of those Shia LaBeouf stand up in the in the cinema applauding kind of moments for me. I was like, that's just brilliant. I love that so much.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
It makes sense when you actually look at the pictures from Dead Zone and you see these holes in these buildings, and you wonder, and you look at the terrain and there's still matches, but that's the whole reason for it. It draws everything together. So yeah, if you really like lore, you get in there, you will pull out nuggets of gold like that for different places.
Excellent. All right, well, I think that probably brings us to the end of community building. So if we have a look at Overwatch, obviously the most exciting thing on my horizon right now, Mike, is SpringCon. I'm really looking forward to getting in there with my Maison Labs and seeing the sorts of experiments and the golden age we can bring to the galaxy in pursuit of knowledge above all.
Yeah, well, so no, my family's actually finished doing most of their yearly activities, and I guess they're just winding up their school year now, so they'll be concentrating on their exams, so hopefully won't have to run around everywhere. I got Dead Zone, so first up, obviously this weekend we got SpringCon, which I'm running, which I mentioned before. Then I'm going to be running another one of the Dead Zone days I was talking about earlier. And then actually somewhere probably in the end of October, early November, I'm actually going to run a Dreadball tournament.
Yeah!
So we haven't had one going in Brisbane for a little while. We usually do a league, but it's normally takes a few weeks up, and more than a few dads are playing in that league and generally don't have the time. So I decided to run a one-off tournament for it instead, which will probably start taking me into November, December. December's normally a bit of a whitewash, people are going away on holidays. And then in January, we have Mantic Madness. So I have a few events coming up in the next quarter or so. So that's my main concentration for this period of time. I'm
really looking forward to the Dreadball day, although I have been challenged that I have to play a team with Honourable. Because my normal playstyle does include a lot of fouling. I am very partial to Z's and Convicts and all those sorts of teams, so I might have to crack out the Adelarana or maybe the Matsudan. Oh, it's going to kill me to have to play only by the rules, but...
Well, let's just be technical. Fouling is actually part of the rules.
Well, it's true.
It's just that you're allowed to foul as part of the rules.
I have to play with the actual rules of in-universe Dreadball.
Yes, that's right. So, yeah, that'd be interesting to see for you. All the Z's and Convicts and all these other teams that normally do all the...
Oh, and Asterians, hit the dirt. Yeah. Excellent. What about you, Luke? What you got on?
What I'm looking forward to is a bit more localised and closer to home in that it's literally my home. So now that my shed's, nearly all sorted, I'm hoping to start on my city board for Firefight.
Oh, nice.
I've had 2 big boxes of the Mantic, like the brick building looking city.
Oh, yeah.
Ones
ones that came out for Mars Attacks originally?
Yeah, ages ago. I've got 2, the very big and the not quite as big but still quite large box of that. So that's enough to fill an entire table with city. So I'm hoping to get those together soon to start having a city table to fight on.
That's wonderful.
Well, that concludes our episode on community building. So until next time, show up, keep it fun, and unleash control fire.
Hear the tales, fierce and deep. Victors roar defeated. We blaze away. We don't hold back. Control fire, ready to attack.